Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Great Council chamber on Nexus Prime Station and felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes watching him. The chamber was massive, with curved walls that reached up into darkness and seats arranged in perfect circles around the speaking floor where he now waited. Representatives from 47 different species filled those seats, and their voices had been arguing for 3 days about the same question that brought them all here today. The question was simple, but the answer would change everything. Should humanity remain part of the Galactic Council, or should they be removed from galactic civilization completely? Jake had listened to the debates and heard the accusations and knew what was coming before the first vote was even cast. Council. Leader Zarthek rose from his elevated platform at the front of the chamber. The tall alien's blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber lights, and his 4 arms moved in precise gestures as he spoke. His voice carried easily across the vast space without any need for amplification. "The motion before this council is clear," Zarthek announced. "Humanity has shown itself to be too aggressive for peaceful galactic society. Their military responses to simple piracy have been excessive. Their diplomatic solutions always involve threats of force. Their colonies expand too quickly, and their ships patrol trade routes without permission from local governments." Jake wanted to laugh at the accusations, but kept his face calm. The piracy that Zarthek called simple had killed thousands of innocent traders before human patrols stopped it. The excessive military responses had saved entire worlds from raiders who the galactic government seemed unable or unwilling to fight. The unauthorized patrols had made trade routes safe for the first time in decades. The Corvin delegate wishes to speak, came a voice from the left side of the chamber. A small reptilian being stood up, and his scales shifted color as he talked. "Human traders have been reliable partners for my people. Their ships go where others will not. They deliver supplies to dangerous worlds that other species avoid. Perhaps we should consider the benefits they bring." "The benefits do not outweigh the problems," Zarthek replied quickly. "Humanity's presence destabilizes our careful diplomatic balance. They solve problems with violence when patience and negotiation would serve better. They act first and ask permission later. This council cannot function with such unpredictable members." More voices joined the debate. The Nexari representative spoke about human medical research that had saved millions of lives. The Zephyrian delegate mentioned human engineering that had improved ship designs across the galaxy. But for every voice defending humanity, there were 3 more condemning them. Jake listened to it all and understood what was really happening. The council feared human independence more than human aggression. They feared that humans solved problems quickly while the council spent years in debate. They feared that human colonies thrived without council oversight. They feared that other species might start following human examples instead of council rules. The debate continued for hours, but Jake could see that minds were already made up. When the final speeches ended, Zarthek called for the vote that would decide humanity's future in galactic society. All in favor of removing humanity from the Galactic Council and requiring their withdrawal from all galactic territory within 30 standard days. Lights began appearing on the voting board. Red lights for yes and blue lights for no. Jake watched as red light after red light filled the display. 46 red lights appeared before the first blue light showed up next. "To Earth's name. The motion passes," Zarthek announced. "Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council effective immediately. All human operations outside the Sol system must cease within 30 standard days. All trade agreements are terminated. All research partnerships are ended. All military cooperation is canceled." The chamber fell silent as everyone waited for Jake's response. Most species fought such decisions with protests and appeals and threats. Some had taken decades to finally comply with expulsion orders. The council expected anger or pleading or demands for reconsideration. Jake simply nodded his head once and spoke in a clear, calm voice. We understand the Council's decision. Humanity will comply fully with all requirements. The silence stretched, longer as Council members exchanged confused looks. Zarthek himself seemed surprised by the simple acceptance. "Do you have any protests to register?" the Council leader asked. "Any appeals to make or conditions to negotiate?" "No," Jake replied. "The Council has spoken and we respect your authority in this matter. We will begin immediate preparations for withdrawal from all galactic territories." Jake turned and walked toward the chamber exit without waiting for dismissal. His footsteps echoed in the quiet space as representatives whispered to each other about the unexpected response. Most had expected threats or warnings about consequences. None had expected simple compliance. As the chamber doors closed behind him, Jake activated his communicator and sent a single coded message to Earth. Within minutes, that message would reach every human ship and station and colony across the galaxy. The largest peaceful evacuation in galactic history was about to begin, and Jake Morrison had just fired the starting signal with two simple words: "Come home." Dr. Lisa Park read the evacuation message 3 times before she finally believed what she was seeing. 30 days to pack up 15 years of research and abandon the xenobiology station on Kepler 442b. 30 days to leave behind the most advanced laboratory in the galaxy and return to Earth with whatever could fit on the transport ships. She looked around her laboratory where samples from dozens of alien worlds filled preservation units and research data filled memory banks. The work here had led to breakthroughs in medicine and agriculture that benefited species across the galaxy. Now all of it had to be destroyed or taken back to human space. The evacuation orders were clear and left no room for interpretation. Nothing of human origin could remain in galactic territory. All research data must be secured or destroyed. All equipment must be removed or rendered inoperable. All facilities must be left in a condition that prevented other species from using human technology or discoveries. Lisa began the sad work of packing her life's research into data cores, while her assistant Jake Cooper prepared the laboratory for shutdown. They worked in silence, knowing that other humans across the galaxy were doing the same thing at the same time. The coordination was perfect, and the response was immediate. Captain Ryan Torres received his orders while his merchant, ship Starbound, was halfway between the Nexari homeworld and the Corvin trading post. He immediately canceled all delivery contracts and began the long journey back to Sol system. The Nexari had been good customers, and the Corvins had become friends, but orders were orders, and humans followed orders. Other merchant captains were doing the same thing throughout the galaxy. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly found themselves without the human ships that formed their backbone. The Nexari expected their medical supplies, but the human freighter carrying them was already burning hard for Earth. The Corvins waited for the grain shipment that would never arrive, because the human transport was heading home. Admiral Helen Carter coordinated the massive evacuation from her command center in Earth orbit. Every human ship and station and colony had to be evacuated within the 30-day deadline, and not one could be left behind. The logistics were staggering, but Carter had planned for this possibility since the day humans first joined galactic society. The evacuation proceeded like a military operation because that was exactly what it was. Merchant ships became transports, research stations became evacuation points, colony worlds became staging areas for the journey home. Every human in galactic space received clear orders about where to go and when to be there. Commander Paul Wright oversaw the evacuation of mining station Omega-7 in the asteroid belt of the Rigel system. The station was humanity's largest mining operation outside Sol system and produced rare metals, essential for faster-than-light drives. 15 years of geological surveys had mapped every valuable asteroid in the belt, and human miners had established extraction operations on hundreds of sites. As the last transport ship loaded with evacuating personnel prepared to depart, Wright activated the demolition charges that would destroy the station completely. The explosion could be seen from orbit as the massive facility disappeared in a ball of expanding plasma. With it went the geological data that had taken years to collect and the mining infrastructure that other species could never replace. Wright watched the destruction from the bridge of the departing transport and felt no regret. The orders had been specific about leaving nothing useful behind, and he had followed those orders exactly. If the galaxy wanted humans gone, then the galaxy could mine its own asteroids and conduct its own surveys. Similar scenes played out across human territory as colonies shut down and research stations closed and military outposts evacuated. Dr. Amanda Foster led the evacuation of the Joint Research Facility on Titan's Edge, where humans and aliens had worked together on quantum communication research. The breakthrough discoveries that could revolutionize galactic communication were packed into data cores and loaded onto human ships. Her alien colleagues begged her to leave copies of the research behind, but Foster refused. The research was human work conducted in human facilities with human funding. If the Council wanted humans gone, then the Council could develop its own quantum communication without human help. The galaxy watched the evacuation with growing amazement, as days passed without a single human missing the deadline or attempting to stay behind. Most species fought expulsion orders for years, and some never fully complied. Humans were leaving quietly and efficiently and completely. Trade began suffering within the first week as human merchants disappeared from major shipping routes. The Nexari Collective discovered that human medical transports had been the only ships willing to make regular runs to their outer colonies where solar radiation made travel dangerous. Without those ships, the colonies faced medical supply shortages that would soon become critical. Agricultural worlds that had sold surplus crops to human colonies suddenly found themselves with warehouses full of grain and no buyers. Human colonies had been reliable customers who paid fair prices and never demanded special treatment. Other species were either too far away or unwilling to pay the transportation costs for bulk food shipments. Council leader Zarthek dismissed reports of economic disruption as temporary problems that would resolve themselves. The galaxy had functioned for thousands of years before humans arrived, and it would function perfectly well after they left. Trade routes would adapt, and new suppliers would emerge, and everything would return to normal within a few months. But the problems kept growing as more human operations shut down and more human services disappeared. Security reports showed increasing piracy along trade routes that had been safe for years. The human patrols that had kept those routes secure were gone, and the raiders were returning in force. As the final week of the evacuation deadline arrived, the last human ships began crossing into Sol system space. They broadcast a simple message to the galaxy as they departed. The message was polite and professional and completely final. Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for the opportunity to participate in galactic civilization. We wish you well in your future endeavors. This concludes all human operations outside Sol system. The galaxy suddenly felt very large and very empty and very dangerous. The humans had left quietly, just as they promised, but their absence was already being felt in ways the Council had never considered. The real consequences of the expulsion were just beginning. 6 months after the last human ship disappeared into Sol system, the Corvan Trade Federation faced its worst economic crisis in 3 centuries. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades now suffered constant delays and supply shortages. Ships that had relied on human logistics networks found themselves stranded at remote stations without fuel or supplies. Federation Trade Director Velkan studied the economic reports with growing despair. Human merchants had not just been traders, but had formed the backbone of interstellar commerce. They found shipping routes that other species considered impossible. They delivered cargo to worlds that others deemed too dangerous or unprofitable. They maintained schedules that others could not match. The humans had possessed an almost supernatural ability to solve logistics problems that left other species baffled. A shipment needed to reach 3 different worlds in 4 different star systems within a specific time window. Human traders would plot courses through asteroid fields and radiation storms and gravitational anomalies to make it happen. Other species took weeks to plan routes that humans calculated in hours. Now those routes were empty, and those schedules were broken, and the carefully balanced trade networks were collapsing. The Federation had lost 40% of its shipping capacity overnight when human merchants departed. Replacing that capacity would take years if it could be done at all. Planet Zarion 4 faced an even more immediate crisis. The desert world had always depended on imported food because its harsh environment could not support large-scale agriculture. Regular supply runs were essential for the survival of the 3 million colonists who worked the mineral extraction, facilities that made the planet valuable. The problem was that Zarion 4 orbited a volatile star that produced unpredictable solar storms. The radiation bursts would fry unshielded electronics and kill unprotected crew members. Most species considered the planet too dangerous for regular supply runs and charged premium prices for emergency deliveries. Only human pilots had been willing to make routine supply runs to Zarion 4. Their ships were better shielded, and their pilots were more skilled at navigating solar storms. More importantly, human crews seemed to view the dangerous runs as a challenge rather than a burden. They had maintained reliable supply schedules for 5 years without a single failed delivery. Now the human ships were gone, and Zarion 4 was slowly starving. 3 supply ships from other species had attempted the run in the past month. One had turned back when solar storm warnings increased. One had suffered radiation damage that required extensive repairs. One had made it through but charged such high fees that the colony could not afford regular deliveries. Governor Janet Phillips received increasingly desperate messages from the Zarion 4 colonial administrator. Food reserves were running low and medical supplies were nearly exhausted. The colony needed help soon, or the evacuation of 3 million people would become necessary. Phillips forwarded the messages to Earth's colonial office but received a polite reply that Earth was no longer involved in galactic affairs. Zarion 4 was outside Sol system and therefore outside human responsibility. The colony would have to find its own solutions or appeal to the Galactic Council for assistance. Security. Problems were growing even faster than economic ones. Karen Blake monitored galactic security reports from her new position in the Mars Defense Force and watched piracy rates climb steadily upward. Attacks on merchant ships had increased by 300% since the human departure, and the numbers kept rising. Human patrol ships had kept the major trade routes safe through a combination of superior tactics and absolute determination to protect innocent travelers. Human crews did not negotiate with pirates or accept bribes or look the other way when attacks occurred. They hunted down raiders with methodical efficiency and eliminated them with overwhelming force. The galactic government had called this approach excessive, but it had worked. Pirates avoided routes protected by human patrols because they knew that attacking a merchant ship would bring swift and deadly retaliation. Human patrol captains did not issue warnings or make arrests. They simply destroyed any ship that threatened civilian traffic. Now the human patrols were gone, and the pirates were returning in force. The Zephyrian hegemony lost 3 colony ships to raiders in a single month. Ships that would have been safe under human escort were now easy targets for anyone with weapons and bad intentions. Captain Steve Cooper read the attack reports from his desk at Luna Base and shook his head sadly. His destroyer Valiant had prevented dozens of such attacks during its patrol duties. The ship was now assigned to Sol system defense and would never again escort civilian traffic through dangerous space. The reports described attacks that could have been easily prevented if human ships had been available. Pirates using outdated weapons and obsolete tactics against poorly defended merchant vessels. Raids that succeeded only because no one was willing or able to hunt down the attackers afterward. On Earth, President Linda Stevens addressed the Global Assembly about humanity's new situation. The speech was broadcast to human colonies throughout Sol system and to the few human stations that remained in operation near the outer planets. "We were asked to leave galactic society, and we have left," Stevens announced. "We bear no ill will toward the galaxy and wish all species success in their future endeavors. Humanity will now focus entirely on our own development and our own people." Behind closed doors, Stevens met with General Nathan Cross to discuss the Titan project. The massive undertaking would make humanity completely self-sufficient within 10 years. New mining operations in the asteroid belt would provide raw materials. Expanded agricultural facilities would produce food for the growing population. Advanced. Manufacturing plants would build everything humans needed without relying on galactic trade. The project was ambitious but necessary. Humanity could no longer depend on galactic markets or galactic suppliers. They had to build a civilization that could survive and thrive in complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Meanwhile, the first requests for human intervention began, arriving at Earth's communication centers. The messages were unofficial and carefully worded to avoid admitting that the senders needed help. But the meaning was clear. Systems that had voted for human expulsion were now asking for human assistance, with problems they could not solve alone. The responses were polite but firm. Earth was no longer part of galactic civilization and could not provide assistance outside Sol system. The galaxy had made its choice, and humanity respected that decision. Any problems beyond the solar system would have to be solved by the galactic government or the species involved. The requests kept coming as conditions across the galaxy continued to deteriorate. Each message was answered with the same polite refusal. Humanity was focused on internal development and was not available for external consultation. The galaxy would have to learn to function without human involvement. 1 year after humanity's exodus from galactic society, the first Void Hunter ships appeared at the galaxy's edge, and everything changed forever. The dark vessels emerged from the void between galaxies like nightmares made real. They consumed light and matter and energy as they advanced toward the populated systems of the galactic rim. The Void Hunters had been dormant for decades, and most species had forgotten they existed. Old records spoke of an ancient enemy that devoured entire star systems. But those stories seemed like myths until the scanner reports began arriving from the outer worlds. Ships the size of moons moving at impossible speeds toward the heart of galactic civilization. Council leader Zarthek stood before the emergency assembly and tried to maintain calm as panic spread through the chamber. Representatives from 46 species demanded immediate action, but no one knew what action to take. The galactic fleet had been designed to fight conventional enemies, not alien horrors from outside reality. "The Veltar Defense Force will engage the invaders," Zarthek announced with more confidence than he felt. "Our weapons are powerful, and our ships are fast. We will stop this threat before it reaches the inner systems." The first battle lasted 6 hours and ended in complete disaster. 24 Veltar warships attacked a single Void Hunter vessel near the Rigel Nexus and accomplished nothing. Energy weapons passed through the alien ship without effect. Missile strikes vanished into its dark hull without causing damage. The Void Hunter responded by releasing a wave of destruction that erased the entire Veltar fleet from existence. News of the defeat spread terror throughout the galaxy as species realized that their most powerful military force had been destroyed without inflicting any damage on the enemy. If the Veltar could not stop a single Void Hunter ship, then nothing in the galactic arsenal could stand against them. Defense Coordinator Patricia Wells monitored the battle reports from her office on Mars and felt a mixture of sadness and grim satisfaction. The same Veltar fleet that had seemed so intimidating during humanity's expulsion had crumbled against an enemy that human weapons could destroy. The technology existed to stop the Void Hunters, but it was locked away in Sol's system under human control. Dr. Kevin Martinez led the quantum research team on Europa and possessed the knowledge that could save the galaxy. His laboratory had developed weapons based on quantum disruption that could tear apart Void Hunter vessels at the molecular level. The research had grown out of human military projects that the Galactic Council had condemned as unnecessarily aggressive, but the research remained classified and buried in Earth's databases. Only humans had access to the quantum disruption technology, and only human ships could deploy the weapons effectively. The galaxy had expelled humanity and now faced an enemy that only human science could defeat. Emergency messages began arriving at Earth's communication centers as the Void Hunter advance continued. The messages came from individual species, rather, than the Galactic Council, because the Council was too proud to admit it needed help. Desperate pleas for assistance mixed with offers of massive payments and territorial concessions. Each message received the same polite response. Humanity was no longer part of galactic civilization and could not provide assistance outside Sol system. The problems beyond the solar system would have to be solved by the galactic government or the species involved. The Zephyrian hegemony was the first major power to fall completely. Their proud fleet had lasted 3 days against the advancing darkness before the last ship was consumed. Zephyrian colonies went silent one by one as the Void Hunters swept through their territory like a plague. Planet after planet fell to the alien invaders as they moved deeper into galactic space. Each world that died sent out final transmissions, begging for help and warning other systems about the approaching doom. The transmissions all ended the same way, with static and silence as entire civilizations vanished. Commander Alice Turner commanded an interceptor squadron based in the asteroid belt and watched the refugee streams fleeing the advancing Void Hunters. Millions of ships packed with desperate civilians raced toward the galactic core, hoping to find safety in the inner systems. Her squadron could have escorted the refugees and saved thousands of lives, but their orders were clear. Protect Sol system only. Humanity had learned its lesson about getting involved in galactic conflicts. The interceptors remained at their posts and watched the refugee ships pass by without offering assistance. Some of the civilian captains sent desperate appeals for help, but Turner could not respond without violating direct orders from Earth. The requests for human intervention became increasingly frantic as more systems fell to the Void Hunters. Council leader Zarthek finally sent a personal message to Earth acknowledging that the galaxy needed human military assistance. The message was brief and desperate and completely ignored human pride. The Void Hunters have returned, and we cannot stop them, Zarthek transmitted. We need your warriors and your weapons. We will accept any terms you demand in exchange for your help. The human response was equally brief and final. Humanity is focused on internal development and is not available for external consultation. We wish you success in your endeavors. But the success seemed impossible as half the galaxy fell under Void Hunter control. The surviving free worlds existed in a state of constant terror, waiting for the darkness to reach them. Trade had collapsed completely, and governments were evacuating their populations toward the galactic core. The Corvan Trade Federation offered to become a human protectorate in exchange for military protection. The Nexari Collective promised to share all their medical research if human ships would defend their worlds. Dozens of other species made similar offers as they realized that only humanity possessed the technology to fight the invaders. All the offers were politely declined. Earth's position remained unchanged despite the growing crisis. Humanity would not sacrifice its people to save those who had cast them out. The galaxy had made its choice and would have to live with the consequences. As the first Void Hunter ships approached the galactic core, the final desperate messages arrived at Earth. Species that had voted unanimously for human expulsion now begged for human forgiveness and human protection. The messages spoke of billions of lives at stake and the end of galactic civilization. President Stevens read each message carefully before filing it away with all the others. The decisions that led to this crisis had been made by the Galactic Council without human input. The consequences of those decisions would be faced by the galaxy without human assistance. Unless something changed very soon, the galaxy would fall. To the Void Hunters and humanity would be the only civilization left standing in the darkness. 18 months after humanity's departure from galactic society, half the galaxy lay in darkness under Void Hunter control. The ancient enemy had consumed entire star systems and turned thriving worlds into lifeless husks. The remaining free worlds huddled near the galactic core, waiting for the inevitable final assault that would end everything. Captain Roger Bennett commanded the research vessel Discovery on a deep space mission to map the outer Sol system, and his ship intercepted the increasingly desperate communications from the dying galaxy. Species that had once been proud galactic powers now transmitted final messages before falling silent forever. The Nexari Collective offered their entire medical database in exchange for human intervention. The Corvan Trade Federation promised complete submission to human authority if human ships would protect their remaining worlds. Every message received the same response from Earth. Humanity was no longer part of galactic civilization and could not provide assistance outside Sol system. The problems beyond the solar system would have to be solved by others, but solving the problem seemed impossible without human help. The Void Hunters possessed technology that rendered conventional weapons useless, energy shields that deflected particle beams and missile strikes, hull materials that absorbed explosions without damage, propulsion systems that allowed ships the size of asteroids to move faster than anything the galaxy could build. Only humanity had developed weapons capable of destroying Void Hunter vessels. The quantum disruption technology created by Dr. Martinez and his team could tear apart the alien ships at the molecular level. But that technology remained locked in human databases and deployed only on human ships that never left Sol system. On Earth, the debate raged in the Global Assembly as representatives argued about humanity's response to the galactic crisis. Senator Michelle Grant led the faction that favored immediate intervention to save billions of innocent lives. "We have the power to stop this nightmare," she declared during one heated session. "How can we stand by and watch entire civilizations die when we could prevent it?" President Stevens led the opposing faction that refused to sacrifice human lives for species that had rejected humanity. "We offered our friendship and protection once," she reminded the assembly. "The galaxy voted to expel us because they feared our military strength. Now they want that same strength to save them from an enemy they cannot defeat alone." The debate continued for weeks as the Void Hunter advance brought the alien fleet closer to the galactic core. Intelligence reports showed that the invaders would reach the last major population centers within 6 months. After that, only scattered colonies and research stations would remain to face the darkness. The deciding moment came when the Veltar Dominion finally fell after a siege that lasted 3 weeks. Council leader Zarthek transmitted his final message as Void Hunter ships surrounded the Dominion capital world. The transmission was broadcast across the galaxy and reached Earth along with all the other desperate appeals for help. "We were wrong about humanity," Zarthek said as explosions lit the sky behind him. "We thought their aggression was a threat to galactic peace, but it was actually our protection. We feared their military strength, but that strength was our shield against enemies we could not see. The galaxy is dying because we drove away the only species capable of defending it." The transmission ended in static as the Dominion capital vanished beneath waves of alien energy. The most powerful government in the galaxy had fallen, and its leader had died admitting that expelling humanity had been a terrible mistake. Dr. Jennifer Lopez headed Earth's xenobiology department and had worked with alien scientists before the expulsion. She watched the reports of entire species facing extinction and made the final argument that changed everything. "If we don't act now, there may be no galaxy left to rejoin when we're ready," she told the assembly. "We can debate the wisdom of intervention, but we cannot debate the consequences of inaction." The vote was close, with 51% supporting limited intervention against 49% opposing any involvement. But the conditions for intervention were strict and non-negotiable. Humanity would act to stop the Void Hunters, but the galaxy would have to formally recognize human autonomy and strength. Never again would humanity be judged for the qualities that made them effective protectors. The terms were transmitted to the surviving galactic governments and accepted immediately without debate or negotiation. Species that had once condemned human aggression now begged for that same aggression to save them from extinction. The galaxy would accept any conditions if humanity would just stop the advancing darkness. Admiral Carter received authorization to deploy the fleet that had been building in secret during humanity's isolation. The ships incorporated quantum disruption weapons and advanced shielding technology that made them more powerful than anything humanity had possessed before the expulsion. The flagship Independence carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets of conventional warships. But this time, humanity would not ask permission or coordinate with galactic authorities. The intervention would be conducted entirely on human terms, with human objectives and human methods. No alien observers would be allowed on human ships, and no alien governments would have input on human tactics. The surviving species would be protected, but they would not be consulted. The Void Hunters would be destroyed, but the galaxy would not be restored to its previous state. Humanity was returning to galactic space, but as protectors rather than partners, and as guardians rather than equals. President Stevens addressed the galaxy for the first time since the expulsion as human ships, prepared to leave Sol System. Her message was broadcast to every surviving world and transmitted to every refugee fleet fleeing the Void Hunter advance. Humanity is willing to engage with galactic civilization again, but the terms have changed, Stevens announced. We will not be governed by those we protect. We will not be judged by those we save. We will not be expelled again for using the strength that keeps you safe. Accept these terms or face the darkness alone. The galaxy accepted because they had no choice. They had learned too late that humanity's aggression was actually their lifeline, and that human strength was the foundation of galactic security. The quiet departure had become a powerful return, and this time humanity would not leave quietly if asked to abandon their principles. The human fleet moved out toward the advancing Void Hunters, and the galaxy held its breath waiting to see if their former protectors could still save them from the darkness that threatened to consume everything. Admiral Carter led the human fleet out of Sol System for the first time in 2 years, and felt the weight of galactic civilization resting on her shoulders. The ships under her command represented humanity's answer to the Void Hunter crisis, and their success or failure would determine whether billions of lives could be saved from the advancing darkness. The fleet was unlike anything humanity had deployed before the expulsion. 2 years of isolation had produced technological advances that made these ships vastly superior to the vessels that had once patrolled galactic trade routes. Quantum disruption weapons that could tear apart matter at the molecular level. Energy. Shields that could deflect attacks from multiple directions. Propulsion systems that allowed faster travel than any other species possessed. The flagship Independence was a mobile weapons platform that carried enough firepower to destroy entire enemy fleets. Captain Tony Rivera commanded the battle group, assigned to intercept the main Void Hunter force at the Rigel Nexus, where 3 galactic armadas had already been destroyed. His ships were outnumbered 50-1, but carried weapons specifically designed to fight enemies from outside normal space. The first engagement began at maximum range as Void Hunter vessels detected the approaching human fleet and moved to intercept. The alien ships were massive dark constructs that seemed to absorb light and energy as they advanced. Their weapons had destroyed every galactic fleet that faced them, and their defenses had proven immune to conventional attacks. Rivera ordered his ships to maintain formation and wait for the enemy to close range before opening fire. The quantum disruption weapons needed precise targeting to be effective, and their limited ammunition meant that every shot had to count. As the Void Hunter ships approached firing range, Rivera gave the command that would determine the battle's outcome. "All ships open fire," he transmitted across the battle group communication network. Beams of disrupted quantum energy lanced out from the human vessels and struck the leading Void Hunter ships. The alien vessels simply ceased to exist, as their molecular structure collapsed under the quantum assault. One moment they were advancing toward the human fleet, and the next moment they were expanding clouds of disconnected atoms. The battle lasted 17 minutes from first contact to final destruction of the enemy force. When the quantum weapons finished firing, nothing remained of the Void Hunter fleet except scattered debris and radiation signatures. The alien vessels that had seemed invincible against galactic weapons proved helpless against human quantum disruption technology. News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than the human ships that achieved it. Species that had given up hope of survival suddenly discovered that the Void Hunters could be defeated. The same human aggression that the Galactic Council had condemned was now the galaxy's salvation. But humanity's return was different from their previous involvement. In galactic affairs, human ships appeared where they were needed without asking permission or announcing their intentions. They completed their missions with ruthless efficiency and departed without explanation or requests for gratitude. Commander Sarah Johnson led the evacuation of Centauri Prime as Void Hunter forces approached the heavily populated world. Her transport fleet arrived without warning and began loading civilian refugees with mechanical precision. When local authorities demanded to know who had authorized the operation, Johnson simply replied that humanity authorized itself. The evacuation proceeded according to human schedules using human methods. Refugee processing stations were established at optimal locations regardless of local regulations. Traffic control was managed by human systems that ignored existing flight patterns. Civilians were loaded onto transports based on human efficiency calculations rather than species preferences or social status. Colonel Frank Miller's Marine Expeditionary Force defended the Orion Trade Hub against Void Hunter ground forces that had landed on the station's outer decks. The battle was swift and decisive as human troops equipped with quantum weapons eliminated the alien invaders in less than 2 hours. Miller's forces then departed immediately without waiting for thanks or offering to help with cleanup operations. The galaxy discovered that this new human intervention came with no diplomatic obligations or cultural sensitivity. Human commanders made decisions based on military necessity and strategic objectives rather than political considerations or alien customs. They saved lives and destroyed enemies, but did not negotiate or compromise or explain their actions. Dr. Martinez deployed the final solution to the Void Hunter crisis from the newly constructed battle station Guardian hidden in Earth's asteroid belt. The massive weapon created a quantum barrier that severed the connection between the Void Hunters and their extragalactic source of power. Without that connection, the remaining alien ships became vulnerable to conventional weapons and began retreating toward the galactic rim. The barrier held as the surviving Void Hunter forces fled beyond the galaxy's edge and disappeared into the void between stars. The ancient enemy had been defeated, but at the cost of fundamentally changing the balance of power in galactic civilization. Humanity now possessed weapons and defenses that made them the dominant military force in known space. When the crisis ended, the galaxy found itself saved but transformed. The Galactic Council had collapsed during the invasion, and individual species now approached humanity directly with requests for trade agreements and defense partnerships. But they came as supplicants rather than equals seeking human protection rather than human cooperation. The old system of galactic government, based on consensus and compromise, had proven inadequate against existential threats. The new system centered on human military supremacy and accepted human authority as the price of survival. Species that had once voted to expel humanity now competed for human attention and approval. President Stevens addressed the reformed Galactic Assembly from her office on Earth and established the terms under which humanity would engage with galactic civilization. The speech was broadcast to every world and transmitted to every species as the foundation of the new galactic order. Humanity is willing to participate in galactic society again, but the relationship has changed. Stevens announced. "We will protect those who accept our protection, but we will not be governed by those we guard. We will share our knowledge with those who respect our judgment, but we will not be judged by those who benefit from our discoveries." The galaxy accepted these terms because the alternative was chaos and vulnerability. They had learned that human strength was not a threat to galactic peace, but the foundation of galactic security. They had discovered that human aggression was actually protective instinct, and that human independence was the source of human effectiveness. Ambassador Morrison returned to his post in the new Galactic Assembly, but his role had fundamentally changed. Instead of representing humanity as one species among many, he now spoke for the dominant power in galactic civilization. His words carried the weight of quantum weapons, and his recommendations had the force of military necessity. "We didn't leave because we were weak," Morrison told the Assembly during his first address to the reformed government. "We left because we respected your decision even when we disagreed with it. Now you understand the difference between strength and aggression, and between protection and domination." The story concluded with Earth's new fleet patrolling the galactic rim as quiet guardians watching for the next threat, while behind them, a grateful but humbled galaxy slowly rebuilt under humanity's protective shadow. The species that had once feared human military power now depended on it for their survival, and the aggression they had condemned had become their shield against the darkness between the stars.